Hey there, as part of my recent video about the iconic voice actor Kevin Conroy, I spoke to voice actress Tara Strong and voice director Amanda Wyatt about what it was like to know and work with Kevin. They were both very generous about sharing their time and their insight with me, and this video contains the full conversation with both of them. So I hope you enjoy watching, and I hope you learn some more about what a great guy and what a talented performer Kevin Conroy was. To begin, could I just have you introduce yourself?
I'm Tara Strong.
Thanks so much. And can you tell me about the first time that you met or worked with Kevin?
First time I met Kevin was at the Batman Record. I was over the moon excited to book the role of Batgirl. I collected Batgirl toys, comics, anything I could get my hands on as a kid, and everyone in town wanted that part. And I knew I was competing with legacy voice actors, A-list celebrities that were in that room. So it was a really exciting and somewhat terrifying day. Um, and Andrea Romano was at the helm and had a table read and did wonderful introductions. And Kevin was immediately welcoming and kind and very giving as an actor, very supportive of a new human in the room. I only recently moved from Toronto to California, so it was uh it was a really exciting time. You know, he was such a great actor, and watching him and Mark Hamill play off each other was such a treat. So there wasn't a day that went by at a Batman record that I wasn't pinching myself and feeling really lucky.
Do you remember, was there anything that he did to make you feel more comfortable as someone who's new coming in?
I just remember him being very kind and welcoming and authentic and not your typical, you know, schmoozy LA actor guy. You know, he was a well-trained, successful Broadway actor, and you could tell. He was someone who took everything he did seriously. Although he had a wonderful sense of humor and was also very warm, he was completely conscientious when doing anything. And when you're guest starring or new to a show that's already been running, whether it's on camera or voiceover, it can be intimidating, particularly if the stars of the show kind of let you know, I'm a big dog around here. And Kevin never did that. He was just always welcoming, and I felt pretty instantly like family. That's how he ran his world.
Yeah, I've heard that he set a really fun, welcoming tone at the recording sessions. Was that something that you experienced firsthand?
Yeah, that's literally what I just said. He was just like I would bet $1 billion you could never find a human to say a bad word about Kevin Conroy.
Are there any particular performances of his that stand out to you?
Well, I believe he was here on this earth to be a conduit for the voice of Batman. I don't think anyone could do it better than him or ever will. Um, I I just feel like he knew that he had this person in him to be shared with the world, to make people feel seen and understood and important. And every time I watched him, I was mesmerized. When you're watching a voice actor perform, they're moving a little bit within the parameters of the microphone. And whatever he said, you could really picture. And that's a good voice actor, right? There's no one that's going to make it in this business just because they have a funny voice. You have to have acting training and come from an acting background and be able to paint pictures for people strictly with your voice. And he could do that seamlessly, effortlessly. Watching him, it was mesmerizing to watch him do anything. And he was always brilliant. My favorite might be The Killing Joke, just because we were all older and more experienced at this point, and the levels that he had to go through with Mark, and with my character were unique to that experience, and it was such a successful comic book thing that of course, he showed up to that challenge expertly and perfectly, and I loved him and Hamill's performance in The Killing Joke maybe more than any Batman they've ever done, and they've both clocked more hours as those characters than any human on the planet, and they deserve to.
From those recording sessions, are there any specific instances that stick in your mind of him being a particularly generous or just fun scene partner?
Mhm. Uh, there were many moments that I just felt like I was acting on camera with him, that we were in all these moments together. It would be challenging to pinpoint, um, one in particular that stood out because all of them were like that. But he did tell a story at a con that I thought was very telling of who he is, that there was a guest performer and it just wasn't hitting. Like, not that this person was a bad actor, it just wasn't suiting that role and it wasn't working. And no matter what Andrea tried to pull out of this actor, it wasn't working, and everyone kind of knew it. And um it was something that Kevin could do pretty well, and he didn't say anything. And then afterwards, when that actor had left, Andrea had asked him to do it, and of course he did. But never letting on that he knew this other human was struggling. You know, he was always just the most professional and warmest. He was like this really cool mix of warm and taking his craft very seriously.
One of the focuses of the video that I'm working on is about the comic that he wrote about coming out as gay and incorporating that into his performance. Was that something that he talked about or was comfortable talking about, like being gay and his private life, his partner?
Yeah, I didn't spend time with his partner, which of course now I regret. Who knew he'd be taken so young? There are decades of Batman voices that we needed him for. It's really tragic how young he went. But he certainly spoke about being gay, and um I don't think he was ever hiding it. I don't think it was something that he ever hid. He felt pretty comfortable talking about it. And to me, it was so nothing to me. Like, I don't who whoever has a judgment on that is a ridiculous human. So, I mean, it didn't really change a thing, nor was it like a soapbox he seemed to push on people. It was just who he was. And I'm certainly happy for him and for young gay teens and children to have had um, a role model like him to look up to, right? I'm sure 50 years ago, 100 years ago, they wouldn't want a character like Batman being played by a gay guy. And it's so absurd. He was born to play Batman, and sexuality, of course, has nothing to do with his brilliant performance. And it's just nice for young people that might be scared facing whatever career they're in their truth, that Kevin Conroy felt safe sharing it. I think it was a really wonderful part of him.
In your experience, has voiceover industry changed or become more accepting over the last few decades to LGBTQ people?
I would say there's certainly more representation, which is nice. And we really didn't see it uh even 10 years ago. And now seeing characters that are bisexual, that are gay, that are pan or whatever on the LGBTQ plus line they fall, they're being embraced in animation, and again being wonderful for young LGBTQ youth to look at and to observe. And I mean, I do a podcast called The Ship It Show, all about love in pop culture, and we let the fans vote. And the first vote was Harley Ivy, and the fact that that show is even embraced. I mean, I don't have anything to do with that show, but that's a whole other story. But that show has embraced that ship. And I mean, I just think it's so important. Representation matters in all areas where people are being marginalized. It matters. And to have a young LGBTQ member of our world watch these shows and see they're normal, they're fine, they're accepted. There's lots of animated characters now with same-sex parents or that are exploring their sexuality. I hear all the time, you one of your voices is what made me feel safe. Watching Raven, I knew I was gay. Huh, great. Like, it's wonderful that the studios are embracing them and that on social media that fans get to embrace them. However, there is still an alarming number of humans that don't appreciate it, don't see the value in it, don't understand that when kids feel suicidal because they don't feel safe about their sexuality, it's because of assholes like you that keep trying to make it wrong. It's because of assholes like you that think if I put a gay couple in a cartoon, I'm going to make kids gay. You can't make kids gay. You can't make someone straight. Someone, when you feel an attraction, I've been attracted to men and women. I don't think, oh, I can't be attracted to her because she's a girl. Like, it's the most absurd thing. No one could make me be attracted to a girl.
You
It's
mentioned
absurd.
the effect that you see, especially at cons, people talking about the importance of the characters. Is there a particular impact that you see Kevin's work having?
That's a good question. I don't know how it relates to him coming out, but he had massive impact on his fans. Massive. I mean, his lines would be out the door. People would line up for hours and hours for Kevin. I think the biggest con experience I had was with Kevin and Hamill when The Killing Joke came out. We were just lined up for days for people wanting the three of us to sign. And he was one of those humans that gave all of himself all day. I'm sure at the end of the day, he's like, I got nothing left, because he was so giving and wonderful to his fans. You know, one of the things I love about going to Comic Cons is cosplay doesn't care about the color of your skin, how old you are, how heavy you are, who you love, who you worship. Anybody could cosplay these characters. They're fictional characters. And no one at cons is weird because everyone's weird and we embrace that weird and we love it. So I don't know that I saw more after he came out, but I do know, um, I do know from my own experience of sharing certain things, like when the Don't Say Gay bill was coming out. You know, I'll have kids cry to me and say, that meant so much to me that you did a video supporting us. Of course. It's insane to me that people still don't. This planet's like a really slow learner, you know? It's infuriating. It's infuriating. So, he was someone who gave constantly, who authentically loved his fans, and I'm quite sure there's more than 1 million gay youth that will be so grateful that he paved that way. That the most successful, most powerful, most believable Batman voice was a gay guy. Heck yes. Like, it's fantastic. He did some amazing trailblazing.
When you look back over all his work, is there a particular way that you want to remember him, or a particular moment that comes to you that I don't know is your favorite way of remembering him?
Well, I have a couple stories. One is he saved my life. There was a guy pretending to be Kevin Conroy on social media. He had a blue check. This was like a decade ago. And so I followed him and we started chatting about sessions and he knew the stories. And we chatted quite a bit. And then he invited me to lunch at Comic-Con. And then I had to email Kevin about something separately. So I sent him an email and I said, I'm excited about our lunch. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, we've been chatting on Twitter. He's like, I don't have a Twitter. What? He's like, don't go to lunch with that guy. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I instantly told Twitter this wasn't Kevin Conroy. And actually, people got mad at me, like, you're wrong, Tara. He's verified. I'm like, I wasn't even worried about my own safety at that point because I knew I wasn't going to meet him, but I was worried about this guy pretending to be him and set up other lunches. So I just went straight out and I said, this is not Kevin. And then I think I forced Kevin to make a Twitter so people could connect with him, which he was very good at on his own. He did his own Twitter. Um, so that was quite memorable. And of course, he did take off his shirt at a con and do the I am vengeance, I am darkness. I am the night, I am Batman. I loved him doing that. I mean, I thank God there's hours of him doing that. It was just when he did it and when he did it live, it would send chills down every part of your body. You could just feel it in every cell. He was put here to play him and to bring people a lot of joy, and he did. And it's real sad that he's not here anymore. It's really sad.
Yeah, something that I've heard from a lot of the fans is how much they'll miss him, and also how grateful everybody is to the incredible body of work that he created over the last 3 decades.
Right. No one has clocked more hours as Batman than Kevin Conroy. I highly doubt anyone ever will. His performance transcends generations. I mean, really, there are fans that watched that show growing up that are now watching with their kids that come to cons and say, "You guys raised me. Meet my kid." Happens all the time. He's a really, really important person. And thank God for the fans, because Hollywood doesn't necessarily appreciate their voice actors as much as the fans do. The fans are the ones that look up who plays their favorite voice and then come out and meet us at cons. And they mean everything to us. And they meant a lot to him. And he showed it.
That's pretty much all my questions. Is there anything else you want folks to know, or anything else you want to say about him?
Gosh. I just think it's so tragic that he was taken so young. He had so much life in him. He was the most authentic human I think I've ever met. He was unafraid to be himself. He was bold in his acting choices. He was always believable in everything that he did. And just as brilliant as he was of an actor, he was a million times that the mensch. He was just the nicest, kindest, funniest human. He would do anything for charity. He meant the world to me. It's just and to his family and friends and husband. And I just want to share my grief with everyone and say so sorry for this loss, because it's a really, really, really big loss. I think I'll be sad forever over that one. It's sad. It's a sad one.
Hi, I'm Amanda Wyatt. I am a voice director, largely in video games, some animation as well. Been doing that for about 18 years now. Yeah.
Can you describe when you first met or worked with Kevin?
I first worked with Kevin on one of the Batman games for Rocksteady. Oh, I was trying to think about it this morning, how long ago that was. I honestly cannot remember. It feels like ages ago. It had to have been before my son was born, so at least 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was your, as a basically, what was your role in working with him? Like, how did you meet, and what was your interaction with him?
I remember the first day I had to work with him because he was not my first Batman. I had done a game prior to, and it was sort of a prequel to the Batman sort of game series, and so we had a younger Batman, and I was a little bit nervous about meeting Kevin because I thought, oh, is he going to know she's that director that directed the other Batman? But he was so gracious. He was so gracious and so lovely to work with all of the time. Basically, he, like any other voice actor, would come in the booth, and I would help facilitate getting him the contextual information he needs to know about the games, and guide him through as best I can. Uh, for an amazingly stellar performance, which he always gave. And that was interesting as well, having been a director. A lot of times you have to help bring the character to life. It's a new character in a video game, and here I, was stepping in with a little bit of nerves, because what would my role be? He's been doing this for so long. He is Batman. How could I even be of any help to him? And we had a great collaboration. These games are very detailed and much more in depth than I think the 22-minute animated series that he was used to. So it was really helpful to provide the backstory and tie the pieces together. We don't record video games in a linear fashion, so it can be kind of confusing when you come in for months and years on end. Where are we? What is the character arc? What has happened? So yeah, kind of helped him along with that.
Was there anything that stood out to you about the way that he worked?
Yes. So Kevin I'll never forget, not the first time I worked with him, but subsequent, we would work together on a game for years. And I got to know that I traveled from the west side of Los Angeles to the Valley, which for anybody who lives in this area knows that that is an unpredictable commute before the pandemic. And I always strive to be there on time. Well, I learned very quickly that when Kevin was in the booth, I was always going to look like the schlep who was late because he came so prepared. And I think it was part of his routine. He's talked about it in other interviews. He always read the morning paper. So I knew that no matter how early I was or late I was, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes early, Kevin would be sitting there in the studio with his cup of coffee, reading the New York Times, and kind of just resetting himself from the drive in. And he was, as everyone knows, very passionate about world events, politics, and just keeping in the know. I'm not quite sure if he was on social media. I'm not a huge social media fan, or, partaker myself, but I knew every day that I'd walk in and he'd be sitting there waiting for me, reading the New York Times. So I don't have one other actor I've ever encountered in my 18 years that has had that sort of ritual.
Do you have favorite performances of his?
I mean, the performances in my games, of course. No, not really. I don't. I mean, I just think, I saw everyone's responses to his passing, and everyone, a lot of actors who've worked with him said, my Batman, my Batman. And that's how I felt. Like, there's so get emotional. There's many other Batmans out there, but when I see a statue of the Bat, his voice comes to life for me. His face is inside that mask, is underneath the cowl for me. So, yeah.
I've heard that in a lot of the recording sessions, he set a fun tone and really put people at ease. Is that something you experienced?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Aside from being the ultimate professional, of course, everybody knows his pedigree is from Juilliard and all of that. He did keep it light. It was interesting. He talked about with me. There was one time where he was in the middle of the line, and all of a sudden he rolled his head back and and he looked over at me and he said, "Amanda, I never imagined that I would be doing back to back to back to back 4-hour sessions with this voice, which was a voice that sat in a lower resonance and a growl for him that isn't natural to his natural voice print." He said, "Never in a million years would I think that when I auditioned for this role, I'd be doing it to this magnitude for this many, weeks on end, years on end, in long 4-hour sessions." But he was game. He absolutely loved what he did. There was no way he would want to pass the torch on to anyone else, no, regardless of the demands that the newer medium, were putting on him. He asked me as we were completing, I think it was the game before last, "How many lines are we at now? How big is this game?" And I said, "Well, the game's really big. It's about 85,000 lines of dialogue." And he said, "God, that's a lot of dialogue." And I said, "Yeah, you want to know how many lines are yours? You can tell me that." I said, "Yeah, I can tell you that. 7,000 lines of dialogue were solely Kevin." So the amount of time he came in and just brought, everything he had trained for every single time for these long, slogging 4-hour sessions. We also had an Alfred count at one point, how many times he said Alfred in the game, because, just to keep it alive, to make every session, everything laid down every 4 hours as magical as the previous 4 hours. It was just amazing that he could do that.
Something that I've heard pretty much universally is how kind and generous and thoughtful he was.
Mhm.
Is that also something that you experienced in working with him?
Oh yeah, yeah. He would tell stories about. I want to say I was trying to recall if it was the Boys and Girls Club that he was really involved with, but different charity organizations that he was involved with. I know when we were at Warner Brothers, he helped them facilitate a really special Make a Wish day for a child when we were all there, which was really amazing. Personally, you never had a he was very approachable. I had, as I mentioned to you in the start of the interview, I had a child along the way as I met him, and of course, my son, found out when he found out I knew the Batman. It was like what? So of course, Kevin, recorded a nice little message for my son, a happy birthday message for my son. He was just so approachable. Yeah, just made
See,
everything special.
something I'm trying to get a sense for is how comfortable he was talking about being gay. It's something he wrote about in the comic recently, and I gave one or two interviews about it, but I'm not really sure, like personally, how much he talked about it.
He never talked about it with me. No, it wasn't part of our relationship. Yeah. I mean, I knew that he was, but yeah, it never really came up on our professional relationship.
Is there a particular way that you think he would want his work to be remembered?
Mm, that's a really good question. Uh, I, I hope he's remembered as, gosh, the professional standards that he brought to voice acting, to any kind of acting. I think uh, I think is so valuable. I just it runs the gamut of the level of expertise that I work with on any given day. And when I get to work with someone that was so passionate about his craft, and someone who this is all he ever wanted from the stories he told me, and he actually achieved it, but he had achieved it in a way that in a medium that was probably vastly different than what he thought. I know he started out in theater and dabbled in film and TV, but to find this niche for himself, um, and a niche that isn't really celebritized very much, but found joy in it, found a way to make it his own. um, that's how I would want him to be remembered. I feel like too many young actors these days, they want the limelight, they want the social media, they want all of the glitz and the glamour. And voiceover is not that, but you can have an incredible career with fans that adore you and be able to give back as much as he gave back, and work and hone on this craft that uh, he started as a young boy, and feel fulfilled. I think he felt fulfilled in his life.
Do you see, or I guess, what impact do you see his work having on fans, on the audience, on people in his life?
I don't think people will ever forget him. I don't think it will be hard for me if I do get to direct another game with featuring the bat at some point in time. That will be a difficult session for me because his voice just resonates and his persona just resonates through that role. And I know he loved his fans. He loved going to the cons, and meeting people. And I recently found out from a friend of mine that works at Rocksteady, who was responsible for the games that we were in together, that he was flown out there to meet the team, and he stayed until the last person left. Um, he was so in awe of what it took to create a game like these, that he stayed until the last person left and wanted to talk to him. That was the kind of person he was.
Yeah, something that I've heard from so many people is that he often had the longest lines at conventions and had the patience and the fortitude to talk to everybody, and not just like sign my name, but like to have a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yes, he did. He would I know a lot of I don't personally do conventions. I know that they can be very, very tiresome, talking to other actor friends of mine. And it is something I felt like he when he talked about going to conventions, he loved it. He was excited to be there. He was excited to yeah, touch base with his fans that had, I think he felt like his fans gave to him as much as he gave to them. And so, yeah, that one-on-one time um, was great. We did have a moment once where we were in the middle of a game, and games are kept under wrap. I never talk about anything because I'm NDA'd 19,000 ways under the sun, and gamers will try to trick people with questions. And there was one moment, I want to say he was down in Texas at a con, and they worded a question in just such a way to where he may have confirmed that he was in the game or that we were developing the game. I can't remember, it was years ago. But lo and behold, Warner found out about it, and it was a problem. And he was like, I'm just not going to say anything anymore. These people are just so smart and they know how to get me. But he came by it so honestly because all he wanted to do was talk to people and share with people. From that point on, though, he was like, no, I don't say anything about these games. Forget it. They'll trap me. I know they'll trap me. And so, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I know his, and just watching conversations and interviews with him, what comes across is that he just really loved doing the work. And you can just, obviously you see it on the screen and you hear it in his voice, like
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah. He loved his job. And yeah, will never be forgotten.
Well, those are all my questions. Is there anything else that you want to say or anything else that you want folks to know?
No one couldn't quite wear a polo shirt like Kevin Conroy.
Great. I will say I've seen a lot of polo shirt.
It's a lot. Every time I see someone in a polo shirt walking down the street now, I think of Kevin. I don't think I ever saw him in anything but a polo shirt. And he wore them well.